for the G20, which seems to be the number of Molotov cocktails certain groups can toss every minute. So what status? How is the land of wine and song these days?
Well, from what I've heard, it's starting to calm down because the G20 just ended, but they're going to have to recover a lot because over the past few days, the whole town has been on fire, cars on fire, stores being looted, like there's actual looting going on all over the place there, people being attacked in the streets, just utter insanity. The police actually lost control of the city and they were bringing in like special forces from Germany. And I really underestimated the Black Bloc in Germany because it was like looking at an army. I don't know if anyone has ever seen that scene from Lord of the Rings where you have them look down from the Tower of Isengard at the army of orcs. Like, it was a Black Bloc that literally looked like that. There are pictures, I'm sure you can put them up, Span. It was utter insanity in Germany. I had never seen anything like it.
No, and I've heard, of course, the anti-fascist movement, as it's so called, has been around there since the turn of the last century. They have a pretty big groundswell movement, and the German listeners to my show have emailed me and said, man, I mean, you think the Antifa in California is bad, man. You should see how much control of the streets and the discourse they have in Germany, and I guess that was a whole other level for you, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is the thing, like, I knew it was worse in Europe, but I didn't think it was so bad. I mean, I'm sure you've seen my video that I've done on the topic now. I didn't think it was so bad that, like, they would literally beat up people that were seen walking in my vicinity. Like, I didn't think it would be that insane, but
okay,
it was.
So let's hear a little bit about that, and we'll link to your videos below. But so you landed with some people, you met some people, and then you were targeted, of course, that they were tracking you in a sort of creepy eye-in-the-sky kind of way across the landscape, but people who were just standing near you in photographs were also targeted and actually attacked, right?
Right. Well, the first day I did a little bit of reporting. I was actually going to do a video on it, but things got a bit too busy. The first day was kind of like a weird rave party that they had going down. There was 10 to 20,000 millennial people from Hamburg that were just raving down the streets with techno beats and just repeating. The whole rave was planned by Antifa, though, so you would have just, it was kind of sickening to watch because it would just be these techno beats and chanting into the microphones of no nation, no borders, and all of the people that were raving were just repeating the mantra back, like anti-capitalism, down with capitalism. So it was just like the most absolute degenerate, hypnotizing indoctrination you've seen in your entire life. It was fascinating to watch, but that kind of threw me off my guard because the next day I went out and I just wasn't even, I was in a big rush, ran out the door, and I didn't realize I was wearing a shirt that one of my friends from the Identitarian groups had given. And I just got to the protest. I ran into a few journalists there, Ludowski, and Poole, and I was like, where them? They knew where the stories would be. They knew what was going to be going on. And some guy ran up to me and started screaming in my face. And I was like, what is going on? What is going on? Like, I don't speak German, right? And I looked down and I'm like, oh my God, it's the shirt I'm wearing. So I ran to a washroom and flipped it inside out. And I was like, okay, we're good. That's the end of story. Like, I'm not going to have any other problems today. I've got sunglasses on, hat on. We're good. But then I saw a group of mainstream media journalists all standing around staring at me, kind of laughing. And it turned out that that group of mainstream media journalists included one guy who takes photos and writes articles for one of the biggest papers in Germany, Zeit. And he had tweeted my photo out, including a few other people, to the Antifa info Twitter, and was tweeting it at all of them saying, there are fascists here, there are Nazis here, you know what to do, kind of thing. Oh, and by the way, she changed her shirt. Like, he was telling Antifa I had changed my shirt, and this was a mainstream media journalist. So it wouldn't have been a problem. I would have been totally safe if it weren't for this kind of collusion between Antifa and the mainstream media and in Hamburg. And from that point on, I was a target, and I had to run to a bar and hide in there and try to find a way out of this kind of zone, because everyone was going up on everyone's phones and they were just looking at these photos, looking for us because there were fascists in the area. And I'll just jump through this story real quick. But basically what happened is I just left there as quick as I could because I knew I couldn't stay or I'd be hurt severely. The other guys I figured would be totally fine, but it turned out that they became targets just for standing near me. One guy, didn't even know him. He was just walking in front of me. I've seen him once or twice at other events. He got beat up, and then another guy, a journalist, I believe, from heavy.com, was standing beside the guy who was in a photo with me. He got beat up, and there's video of him online on heavy.com, and he's got his hands in the air. He's on the ground. I've never seen anything like it. He's on the ground with his hands in the air saying, "I'm not a Nazi, I'm not a Nazi," like begging with these people that are hitting him and beating him, and they're just yelling at him, "You're a Nazi, you're a fascist," and he's just begging, like, "Please don't beat me," and they're running out of there. And these guys were beaten basically just for being seen in a photo with me. It was Luke Rudowski, this one German reporter I don't know, and another reporter for heavy.com that I don't know, that were beaten because they were seen in a photo with me. And because of this mainstream media journalist.
I mean, I can't imagine what kind of mindset, Lauren, it would take when you're vastly outnumbering a minority, particularly in Germany, and you're unleashing physical violence against that minority. I mean, it's not like people with your perspective or my perspective are exactly a majority in Germany. So you've got a targeted minority in Germany being beaten in the streets by people dressed all in black or dressed in a particular kind of uniform. How much lack of self-awareness does it take to think maybe, just maybe, we have become what we despise?
Yeah, no kidding. And you know what? This is the thing. Like, I for one, am not a victim. I got out of there. I am totally okay. It was a freaky situation, but what I feel bad for is the people that live there, because I messaged a few of the identitarians from the area, and I was like, "This just happened to me. This is insane. I can't believe this." And they were like, "Oh, like, are you kidding? That's nothing." Like, my friend who, Martin Zellner, he's the leader of the Austrian chapter of the Generation Identity. He was like, "Oh yeah, you know, my parents were pretty mad when they burned down our car." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, he just said that nonchalant. He's like, "Yeah, they burned our car and they were pretty mad, but we get over these things. We're stronger. They can't censor your opinions." But that's just like something he said in a regular sentence. Like, it's not a big deal. It happens all the time to them. Another guy messaged that was in the Hamburg area. He was saying like, "Oh yeah, they have my photo and they're tracking me down all the time." Like, can you imagine living the way I was in that video on a day-to-day basis? Like, that was nothing. Just being stalked in a bar and being scared to leave and having my shutters closed because I didn't want people to see me. And like, I was literally wearing a burqa going to the airport because we were so worried about people recognizing me. But these people that are right wing in Germany, especially Hamburg, they're living this on a daily basis. And I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. But I think the scariest part was that when I was walking away from the area, my location was being tweeted out wherever I was, and I was away from the black bloc. I wasn't near them. All the black bloc were in one area, yet they still knew where I was. So this was normal civilians that were just walking by, reporting my location to the black bloc. It's like a communist country where you don't know if the person you're going into a shop to beg for a taxi is going to report your location to the black bloc. In fact, I did that with one person, and I took the taxi back to that area because I needed to pick something up, and there were a bunch of Antifa outside the shop where I had asked the lady for the taxi. So I don't know if she reported me to the black bloc, right? So imagine being one of these right-wing people in Germany and every day not knowing who's going to send your location to have you beat up, not knowing if your home's going to be destroyed, which happens all the time there, if you're going to get stabbed in a back alleyway, if your family is going to be hurt, because apparently it doesn't matter. Even just people I don't know that are standing near me will get injured. It's utter insanity.
It is.
And they can't control it.
Okay, so you mentioned that as well outside of this particular conversation, Lauren. You were talking about how it really seemed to you, and I think there's pretty good evidence that this is the case, that the police lost control of the city, that basically it was, you know, the worst cliches about anarchy and it's like a war zone. And looking at the videos of people driving around in these palls of smoke and running and throwing bricks and people fleeing. I mean, this is like not like a war zone. It seems it is a war zone.
Oh, absolutely. And it really made me wonder, like, that was because even on the first day that I was there and I was able to do proper reporting, the police backed off on the partiers and Antifa that day as well. I think their biggest fear was there were like 20,000 of them and they didn't want to fire the water cannons or instigate them. So they just said, fine, you can have the streets. We don't care. Like, we're just going to leave you alone so it doesn't create like a riot, right? And what did they do that night? The streets were just covered in litter and they were sitting around drinking and saying smash capitalism with music. What did they do when they gained the streets the next day violently? They just set things on fire, looted stores, and beat people. What is their end game? What does it look like when Antifa has their streets? What does it look like when they destroy the man? like not so freaking good. What is their end game? That's the real question. Well, among many others, but it was very apocalyptic like, and I feel bad for underestimating it. And one of the scary parts is all the fake news that was going on. Shep Smith from Fox News said these were just peaceful protesters. They were saying they were just anti-globalization marchers. Like, all of the West seems to not understand how bad it is in Europe now. And the reporters that I was talking to as well that were there, they were telling me, we'll stay here for a little bit, but American media, they don't care to buy this stuff. They don't care about what's going on in Europe. If a Trump supporter gets punched, or a Hillary supporter gets punched in a street in New York, that'll be bigger news than the entire city of Hamburg being on fire. Right. Like, for some reason, the West or America doesn't care about the state of Europe, even though it's coming for them too. They can't see that that is going to be America.
Well, I mean, I think to sort of zero in a little bit, Lauren, I would argue that it's the leftist media in the United States and even outside of Europe. The leftist media in Europe is assumed, but it's the leftist media don't want to reveal the feral violence of the extreme left. So they want to cover this kind of stuff up. Obviously, if there were right-wing people or just non-leftists rioting and attacking people and chasing people down and so on, the media would be all over it, because then they can use that to, demonize anyone on the right, all the Republicans and so on. But because it's leftist violence, it's automatically going to be covered up by the media.
And it's crazy because it gives you a vision of what it looks like once the left does solidify their power. Because I think we've got this kind of view in our heads right now. It's like the right is winning, we're going to be okay. But the left there, once they've got power, they've held it for a long time and they've suppressed all free speech. Like, you can't talk there. I was trying to watch YouTube videos from some of the skeptic community online in Germany. I couldn't. It just said, this user is not available in this country. This user is blocked in this country when I was trying to read tweets from certain right-wing accounts on Twitter. You are going to be shut down by the black bloc in the streets. The media are going to tweet out your location. The government isn't going to help you or support you legally. Like, they'll kill people if they want to. And this isn't a first world country. So it is possible. It is still possible that the left could gain that much power in America. It is still possible they could gain that much power in Canada, and that could become the new normal. So when we talk about things like the importance of free speech, the importance of opposing Antifa right now while they're still small, while we still have these rights and values, like, the reason we fight so hard and seem so ridiculous online with how crazy we go is because we know now, well, I certainly know what it looks like when you lose these. We know historically, from historical examples, what it looks like when you lose these things.
Oh, I mean, to me, there's no question that people like myself would be targeted if the left gains significant power. I mean, the left has been violent and has always been violent. I mean, the American assassinations of American presidents almost always come from the left. There was a leftist extremist anarchist who fired the first shot that started the ball rolling towards World War I. We've got 100 million dead from communism just in the 20th century alone. There is no pile of bones too big to slow their will. And so the fact that the hard left in Europe is violent, it's like they're very clearly signaling the kind of society that they want, the kind of society that they want, are ruthlessly Russian style, and who value able to think, speak free in the world. Well, that to me is it's an unbelievably terrible fate.
And yeah, exactly. And I'm at this point where I don't know what to do, because how do we react? It's getting really, really tiresome for me to just say, like, oh, I was attacked, right? It's like, what am I supposed to do? Am I like punch back? I don't, honestly, this is the thing. At least I can say, if I punch an Antifa, if I punch a black bloc, I don't think anyone will blame me. Like, I'll have free game to do that. But like, seriously, what do we do at this point? Do we seriously get the right-wing death squads out? Like, what do we do? How do we push back against like these violent mobs of people that the government won't protect us from? It's without stooping to their level, you know? And it's, I don't know if you have an answer for that, because I've just been left in thought the last few days. Like, they're hurting people I don't know. They're hurting friends of mine. They're trying to hurt me. They probably would kill me if they got me in an alley alone in Hamburg. Like, no doubt they probably would. So you can't even have a weapon there to defend yourself. You can't have pepper spray to defend yourself. What are you supposed to do? I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, I still think that we're in the place and we have this communications apparatus that allows you and I and then hundreds of thousands of people to watch these conversations, keep turning on the light, keep making arguments. But I'm perfectly willing to have arguments and debates with leftists. But the moment the mace starts coming out, the moment the brass knuckles and the bricks start coming out, that part of the argument definitely can't sustain itself. And you're right. I mean, of course, Europe has been to a large degree defanged, de-armed. People don't have really the right of self-defense because they have to rely on a government and a police force that seems to be there to police the least violent people. The most reasonable people are the ones who get policed the most.
They were firing the water cannons at this German reporter and Luke Rudowski when they were running away from the Black Bloc that were trying to attack them. It's like, what? And the police refused to help them. They refused to do anything about it. The German police is a little better, but I'm sure you've seen the British police where crowds of them are running out of no-go zones. Crowds of them are running away from terrorists with hatchets. They're so incompetent and useless. So, the biggest thing...
Sorry to interrupt, but just a sort of a basic rational calculation, if you're a policeman and you're probably disarmed or underarmed and you've got, 1,000 people on one side and you've got 12 people on the other side, I mean, who are you going to arrest? You want to wade into the 1,000 people that are very violent, and the arrest may not end there because then you're the guy who's beating up the leftists, which is like, poking the mafia girl on her wedding day or something, and then your location as a policeman is going to get tweeted out, and it would have to be a wholesale, scoop and just everybody who's involved, who's done anything illegal, scoop them up. You'd have to, because the way it stands right now, just from a sheer survival standpoint, and I have to live here standpoint, sure, you're going to target the foreigners who are reasonable, and everybody knows the right is targeted because it's more reasonable, whereas the left is going to escalate and make your life, hell itself.
Mm-hmm. And that was another interesting thing I was told while I was there by some of the locals. They were saying, you don't understand, Lauren, police officers are part of the Black Bloc. Police officers, despite being the ones that are often attacked by them, there are members of the police and members of the government that are a part of this radical terrorist organization. That's how deeply embedded it is. It's utterly insane. Can you imagine if we had crowds the size of armies of Antifa going to the streets of New York? How do you think Trump would react to that? How do you think the American government would react to that? The fact that it's been going on for so long in Germany, and that's just been their normal for ages. That's just their normal, is utterly mind-boggling to me.
You also were talking in one of your videos, Lauren, about you and the other reporters out there were hoping to do some live streaming and stuff on the ground as it's happening. You had to show your passports to get a tiny fragment of data. How on earth does the German government have so much control over the cell phone companies that you have to get a permit to broadcast from a live event?
Right. You have to show your passport, do a whole ID check, and you just get 1.5 gigabytes. It's nothing. And they passed that law for the G20, and apparently they're keeping it in. So it's you can't get cell phone. Oh, and not only that, not the day we got there, but before we got there, they had just banned Uber as well. So it was difficult to get anywhere as well. They're just cracking down more and more and more on freedoms, capitalistic freedoms, and it was impossible for us to get around, impossible for us to do our jobs, everything, because the government had cracked down so much. Yet, while they're controlling this aspect, these radicals have free reign. They can do anything they want. The Black Bloc, people have just accepted it. But no, you can't get in your Uber. You can't have your cell phone data. That's too dangerous. That is, we're going to spend all our energy on that, not this literal army that could potentially has taken a city. They have an army that has literally taken a city over control, and they're worried about data, and they're worried about Uber. It is madness. Sorry.
Well, this is the strange thing, and I don't know. I know what you mean about this. What do we do, and what's next? And when you have the media and the academics and the entertainment media and the mainstream media, the entertainment media, you've got the government, you've got the police, and they all seem to be focused either ideologically on supporting the extreme left, or they're sort of making this rational calculation. well, the extreme left is more dangerous. They're more in your face. They can destabilize things more. They're more willing to use violence. So we're going to appease them. And at what point does the right say, okay, well, the conversation is done because everyone in society is simply trying to appease the most aggressive. So maybe not being aggressive isn't going to work for us anymore.
And that's the thing, like, I do not want to promote violence from right-wing people. Like, I don't want to be the person that causes a right-winger to go shoot a place. That would be horrible. That would be an awful thing to happen. And I don't want people on the right to snap and hurt people. But it's like, you gotta fight back at some point. That's why, kind of like the Battle of Berkeley thing, I was like, yes, you fought back. You fought the bad guys back, the guys that wanted to hurt you. And I think that is completely moral. I don't think in Germany, I can't blame any right-wingers there for not trying to go out in the streets and battle the black bloc that's 20, 30,000 strong, right? But I mean, I really don't mind people on the right fighting back. Self-defense is completely within people's rights. Never be the first to throw a punch, but always be the last.
And it is funny, too, because this is part of the whole bigger question about the welfare state and so on, because a lot of the people that I see, I can't really imagine that they have a lot of big jobs to get up to and go to in the morning. Where are they getting their resources?
It's it's a really good question, and I assume it's all funded. I mean, I heard there was a media company there. They were telling me about media companies there, that Unicorn Media or something. It's literally an Antifa news network that's funded and supported and has their live stream going. So it's like an entire funded organization, an army that's very well established. I don't know where their funding comes from. I think it would be very interesting for people to look into that and figure that out, because I think you could probably find some scary stuff, uncover some scary stuff there.
Well, and I did see some videos of sort of looting and the usual kind of going through the electronics store and grabbing everything with a white box or any box for that matter. And people are like, wow, they're looters. It's like, some of them are communists, right? Communism is looting. It is the violation of property rights. It is theft. And people seem to be surprised that the people who believe in theft as the basis for society might just be stealing stuff.
Precisely. They believe in theft from other people, not from themselves. It really got me thinking, especially when I saw the first rally I went to where they were all just rolling around on the ground in their Antifa flags, pissed drunk. I was like, no one here is getting onto a loudspeaker and saying, Viva la revolution, we've taken down the proletariat, now to start the bread lines and starting up a beautiful community where they had food ready for everyone, where we're giving away the housing. No, it was a mad dash for, it was all this hedonism. It was a mad dash for me first. I want to get drunk and do this right now and take drugs on the street and listen to music. It's all about me. I want that electronic. I'm going to go get that. None of these communists are about how can I help other people around me. It's all about selfishness.
Wait. Are you saying that these guys aren't sitting there figuring out how to best set up a collectively owned worker-operated factory to produce wonderful benefits and goods for the proletariat? Is that not their thing? They just want to throw bricks at people, get drunk, and grab an iPhone? Is that wow? Now, what is,
right.
Sorry, I know it's an unholy late hour where you are, so we'll keep this short, but what are your feelings about what you've seen? Because, of course, you've gone face-to-face with stuff that is heavily censored or heavily minimized, and a lot of people aren't seeing it. You're seeing, of course, a side of Europe, if not a side of Germany, that is fairly ruthlessly repressed. Like now you've got Merkel and Facebook making these laws where massive fines if what's loosely defined as whatever hate speech means in Europe and in Germany stays up, and there's a lot of collusion to keep this information as you say, the internet is very tightly regulated, sort of Chinese communist style. What are your feelings or sense of foreboding regarding, I guess in this case, we'll continue the tour of Europe, but in this case, Germany, where do you see it's heading?
Well, first of all, I have to admit, I feel unbelievably ignorant, I would say, and I don't mean that in I feel like I know so much less about the world than I do, and I mean that in a good way. Like, I've learned how little I understood about Europe, like how much of a kind of skewed perception we have of Europe in the West, and how little I understood what a crazy situation they were dealing with. So I've learned a lot in the last little bit, and I've realized I need to spend a lot more time here to learn just how much the right is dealing with in Europe, and I plan on doing that. And I mean, it's one thing to say where is Germany headed, and another to say where are they already at, because I think they're already there. They're already at this kind of Orwellian state of you will have your house destroyed if you're right wing. I couldn't live in Hamburg. I couldn't. If I lived in Hamburg, I don't think I'd be able to live there for a year and actually be alive. I honestly don't believe that. That's why you don't hear, you always wonder, where are all the European YouTubers talking like us, as freely as us? There are very few, but they would be harmed severely, like if they go out in the streets of Hamburg. So they're already there. It's not even a question of where's Germany headed. They already have extreme censorship. They already have extreme migration coming in. They already have extreme radical leftists. The only place it can go from here is significantly worse on all of those three levels that I mentioned. And those are the three things you have to worry about: the radical leftists, the mass migration, and obviously Islamization, censorship, government control. It's madness. I'm sorry. I'm still flabbergasted by the whole thing, and it's still difficult for me to even articulate what was going down. And I would suggest interviewing some of the people that are actually living those situations if they'd be willing. Last time I was in Germany, almost every single person I interviewed asked to have their face blurred. I almost uploaded my first video of having help being escaped from the back of the bar without the bar lady's face blurred, and I was horrified. I quickly went and I blurred it because I realized she could have the shit beat out of her, for helping me out. Like, that's how crazy it is, right?
Well, in any conflict, the most dedicated and those willing to go to the most extremes generally win. Now, if the extremes are, I'm going to have better evidence, I'm going to have better reasoning, I'm going to be more committed to my cause, then that is what's going to win. But if reason and evidence are kind of gone out of the window and it becomes sort of feral, reptilian brain fight or flight dedication to your cause, then it seems, as you say, it's not like, well, the left might win. Well, they already have won. Now the body of freedom may still be twitching, but that doesn't mean the heart is going to jump up again anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Man, you're forcing me to leave on such a sad note here, and I don't want to. But as soon as you've always got the course of empire that at least happens, and you can count on that. When things get really, really bad in an area, eventually it creates strong men, and those strong men create good times, and those good times create weak men, and those weak men create bad times, and the cycle continues. So at least we know if things do get worse, and as they continue to get worse, the hearts and the kind of the fight that we have on the right will get stronger, and people will get more united, and people will be able to return things to those good times.
Well, of course, as long as society as a whole can dangle a future in front of, in particular, young men, as long as they can say, oh, we've got this great thing, obey us, or obey the social rules, and, you'll get a career, and you'll get a wife, and you'll have kids, and you'll have a great life, and so on. But it seems to me that in Europe, and in Germany in particular, that way of molding the obedience of young men is really beginning to fall apart. And the moment that I think young men as a whole in Germany recognize that they have no future, then I think we will start to see some significant pushback. And again, I always, the reason we have these conversations is to try and keep it as peaceful as possible. But my hope for a peaceful solution seems to diminish day by day. And of course, that is something we just have to keep an eye on. So, stay safe. Thank you so much for the reporting that you're doing and the enlightenment that you're bringing to people. I worry when you're in harm's way, but I'm glad to see you in the relative safety of London. And thanks again so much. We'll put a link to your great book, which we didn't mention here below, but we'll give a link to your book and to your YouTube account, which is well worth everyone checking out, as well as your Twitter. Thanks so much, Lauren. I really, really appreciate your time tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.